Whoa, dude! I just got back from Las Vegas.
Yeah. How much was the bail money?
No bail money was involved.
Of
No
course
jail
not.
time.
Ah.
Yeah.
So Andre and Cole, the ninja cameraman, went to SEMA 2023
Yes.
in Las Vegas, Nevada, and managed to come back. Now, as far as we know, they're clean with no rashes. Let's hope that continues. It takes time to sometimes figure these things out. But while you were there, and you may have noticed that Andre is here doing a car podcast.
Yeah. Why is that?
Because Roman and Tommy are in Japan, and also because you went to SEMA and they didn't,
Yes.
and I didn't either. So you're the only guy to really report on what you saw there for cars, and that is exactly what this podcast is about. We're going to be talking about the 2023 SEMA show for cars, and
Yes.
maybe sneak a truck or two in there as well.
Yeah, because I also did the truck podcast focused on pickups and big giant SUVs.
But that was a whole podcast from the floor of the show, right?
Yeah. But then I kind of picked out interesting cars as well. And this is also kind of about the state of the industry, right? Because we're living through some less than easy times.
They're odd times indeed.
And they're kind of difficult. So, but still, in my opinion, right now, I'm going to say that SEMA was buzzing. There was a lot of energy there. There were a lot of people. There's almost no empty floor that I noticed.
Which
you know,
is
like
strange.
last year, you and
Yeah.
I were there, and there were a little bit of empty pockets.
Yes.
On some of the floor space in the convention center for SEMA, but I didn't see that this year.
And that's really strange because, and we're going to get to this part of the story a little bit later on, of all the automakers, the biggest one who isn't there or wasn't there was Stellantis. And normally Ram, Jeep, and Dodge
They're
have
huge.
huge booths and a huge presence there. So the fact that they weren't there yet, they filled up all that space. And they pulled out, what, 2 weeks ago?
Yeah.
So, I mean, not
Very
much
recently,
time.
yeah.
So I'm pretty sure that the folks at SEMA probably gave some bargain discounts on, booths for other people. But here's some good news. For aftermarket lovers, that means that coming out of, everything with the pandemic, more of these companies feel confident enough to go back to SEMA. So that's actually some good news mixed in with the bad.
Yeah, and SEMA is really an industry organization, but they're trying to expand their reach into consumers, right? So you and I and everybody listening and watching, because SEMA, Specialty Equipment Manufacturing Association, right? It's basically taking care of kind of the aftermarket space of the automotive world, and they help companies, get certain, information, certain tools, enable them to make new products, stay certified and legal,
Right.
But this world is changing fast, right?
It sure is. There's a couple of things that you should probably know. So you at the very end of that, you mentioned keeping companies, making sure that they stay legal.
Yes.
A couple of years ago, were you there with me? We were at the show, and all of a sudden, a bunch of police officers and some feds walked onto the floor and escorted 2 different booths off the floor.
I remember this, but this is a different legality
I
that I was referring to.
I know, but it's just that this is the type of thing that actually happens on the floor.
What was the root cause of that? That was
These 2 companies were there under false pretenses, and the items that they were showing were not
like copies of other items.
Exactly, they're
potentially?
knockoffs,
Yes.
and there were certain items like I don't know if it was helmets or seatbelts or what, but something to that effect. And they were not considered federalized. More importantly, they did not pass any safety requirements. So they were just pawning off, cheap knockoffs and stuff that could really hurt, citizens who buy them. So anyway, but I wanted to get to another point here.
Yes.
Which is the whole purpose of SEMA is to get these components out to the public, regardless of the size of the company that builds them. So as small as a mom and pop place that are building scabbards for knives, which can, I guess, be part of the auto industry, and they actually do have things like that there, all the way up to people who are building crate engines, and all the way up to automakers, because more often than not, an OEM will go out there, Toyota, Honda, Nissan, you name them, and they will go and display either a new car, a concept, or both. Oddly, this year, not so much of that, but we do have 2 different sides of a coin. We have what could be very expensive power and very cheap power, both demonstrated by automakers.
Yes. So actually, Toyota was there in a big, huge way. And they were probably, I would like to say, one of the only original equipment manufacturers, OEM, so basically a traditional legacy automaker that was there in a huge, huge presence. You know, Ford had a couple of booths, not the same space they used to have.
Yeah.
And GM wasn't there.
I think Toyota took Ford's old space.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
it was kind of central in a central hall, kind of a large area over there. And then Honda didn't have a huge presence there either.
But they made a comeback. They weren't there before.
Right.
They've been gone for years.
And Nissan was there too.
Yes.
And then there was also a lot of integration of brands. You know how General Motors now works with AEV, right? So there's a GMC Sierra Grande truck. That concept was at the AEV booth actually, and then Ford started working and integrating with ARB. So they showed a couple of off-road vehicles there as well.
Which would be the Bronco and the Ford Ranger.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, actually the Ranger story I wrote up, you can see it at alltfl.com or tfltruck.com. And what they did is very similar to what AEV is doing with General Motors, where they're doing full builds and they're specific to the vehicle. So for instance, on the Ford Ranger, the bumper I think looks fantastic. It looks like something that Ford built for their vehicle, as opposed to having an automaker or having someone else come in and build for the automaker. So this is very similar to what GM is doing, and I have a feeling that this is the new battle. This is the new war.
Yeah, and it's also exciting to see. Competition lifts all boats, right?
It does indeed.
So there was a lot of that. So even though we didn't see like a brand new vehicle unveilings from the manufacturers, we saw a lot of very cool builds and a lot of energy was still there. So it's not like we're declining. I didn't feel like that. I felt like there was a lot of good energies there, and smaller companies, like you're saying, had a voice, you know, and they could be present at this show.
That's one of the attributes of SEMA. Now, for those of you who are wondering, perhaps you're listening or watching this and saying, this isn't a public event. You're correct. Technically speaking, SEMA is not a public event. However,
unless Friday.
That's right.
Yeah.
So they recently, over a couple of years ago, opened up a special day, Friday, which is also known as Horror Day or Black Friday, because for people who are in the business of journalism, having more people show up while you're trying to film and do your thing there is horrible. It makes it so hard to do. But for regular, and I mean regular like non-journalists, it's great because then you have access to the floor. Tickets are not free.
No, and this year they're even expanding it. They have a concert. I mean, very many big names, huge names. Imagine Dragons.
Taylor Swift.
I don't think Taylor was there.
Oh, okay.
Anyway, very big band names and musicians are also coming to help promote SEMA. And there's a raffle. They're giving away a vehicle.
There's a ridiculous amount of money that goes into SEMA. Yeah. That's true. So what are we looking at here now? This looks like a Ferrari Testarossa, but not.
Yes, so I wanted to bring this up. And then also in this episode, I have an interview with a gentleman from Nissan, Carl Phillips, and he's a friend of the show.
Yes.
Also, I can show you actually video from the show floor of the Mustang FP800S, which is their supercharged new Mustang.
Now, it's a supercharged Mustang, which has this enormous supercharger, but in addition, that particular one is a concept. So the supercharger is for real, and you can get it, but the concept is a lowering kit, body kit, suspension, brakes, a few other things that make it into a better performing vehicle. And that was on the show floor, and that's what he was able to cover.
Yeah, but the reason why I'm showing you a picture of a super customized Ferrari Testarossa, some people actually, I think one of you guys, the listener, coined it the Tesla Rossa. It has nothing to do with Tesla, really, but it is electrified. So I know electrification is a tough subject at this time because there is a lot of controversy around it. But, and I was surprised by this, Nathan, the electrification area was called Future Tech this time.
Okay.
It wasn't like EV Land or anything like that. It was called like Futuristic Tech, and it had a lot of people in it.
Yeah.
Like actually walking around, learning things, checking things out, looking at different solutions like electric axles or electric motors,
Right.
batteries. Our friends from Legacy EV were there. We've done a couple of projects with them in the past. And this was at the Legacy EV booth. This is a built by Gas Monkey Garage. And they actually took a Testarossa and chopped its roof off and gave it an electric heart instead of an engine.
Sacrilege in so many ways, and I don't mind electrification. I think it has. I think the automotive world has a place for it, and I know that there are a lot of people. I have friends over at ECD, and that's East Coast Defender, and they basically, and they were there at the show.
Yeah.
They take Land Rovers and whatnot, and they'll put big V8s in them, or they'll sometimes put a powertrain from a Tesla in them. And I know that there's a place for that. I'm totally fine with that. But then my skin starts to crawl just a little bit when I see somebody take a classic Ferrari that I grew up with, wanting to be hanging with Crockett and Tubbs, and I see them chop the roof off of it and then turn it into an electric vehicle. I'm sorry, but it just makes it really hard to look at. But this is the point of SEMA, right? Having these crazy, wild, weird concepts. And the cool thing is about it, there's always like a little kernel of truth with every wild, weird concept out there. That's the point, I think. For instance, some of these, massive trucks that are lifted and lowered at the same time, which is still a crazy conundrum for me. There may be a point to it. Maybe it's an axle that they have that's, special that you can order, or an exhaust system, or chrome plating, or whatever it might be. And in this case, I'm pretty sure that they've had some sort of cooperation with, as you mentioned, with
Legacy
EV, and the way they build electric powertrains. So there's always a connection there as a kernel of truth that leads up to these builds.
Yeah, and there's let's say you're restoring something, right, in your garage, and you're faced with a choice. Do I rebuild this engine? Let's say you maybe have a straight 4, or a V6, or a V8, or whatever have you, or maybe you are not familiar with rebuilding engines. Maybe it's too expensive. Maybe you would like to go another route. Maybe you would like to buy a little electric motor and stick it in there. But as we found out, the biggest costs of electrification of any project is battery.
Bingo.
And this Ferrari, well, actually, I did a whole video about this. We already published that. So check out oldtfl.com for everything from SEMA. Colin and I published several videos and several stories from there. The devil is in the details, actually putting the battery in there in the right places so you have weight distribution. You have to wire it all together. There has to be a coolant system for the battery.
Right.
And then you have to connect it to the central brain so the throttle works correctly. And so it still has a lot of involvement.
It's complex, but the good news is the systems are becoming more and more plug and play. There are all these kits that exist now to where you can essentially yank an engine out of many different cars, not all, and plug in an electric motor right onto the transmission in some cases. And as long as you have a good location for the batteries, you have almost everything you need in the kit to turn this vehicle into an electric one, and to do it in a very short amount of time. And the best part, I guess, for electrification is that you don't have to swim in pools of oil, right? You don't have to worry about gasoline leaking out of it. You do have to worry about fire, that's for sure. So there's like benefits, obviously, there, and there's also detractors. But I have one word for you, Andre.
Yeah, what's up?
Buhanka.
Oh, I was afraid you were going to say that.
Yeah, you were talking about having something that's old that has whether or not you want to fix the engine or replace it.
I am facing this conundrum. At this moment, if you said like this month, I would answer that electrifying a Buhanka would be too expensive.
Okay.
So what I kind of want to do is I want to hang on to my Buhanka. I almost sold it, by the way.
Yeah.
So that was a rumor, and that was true. I was selling it, or I tried to sell it. It didn't work out. The deal fell through.
Yeah, he offered you gold watches and fish.
No, close.
Okay.
But I want to hang on to it a little bit, and so the way I see the future is like in 1 or 2 years, prices will come down again.
Yes.
On these components. We're talking about motors, batteries, maybe even the simplification of these systems, right? That'll be a little bit easier to connect, and because they're working on this consistently.
Right.
So I want to wait a little bit.
Okay.
And then maybe one year, I can bring my Buhanka to SEMA. Would that be sweet?
It would be awesome. And you would have, as far as I know, the only electric Buhanka in existence if you did it.
Or the only Buhanka at SEMA. How many other Buhankas do you think I've seen at SEMA?
You know, it's possible one somehow showed up, but I don't think very many.
Well, not this year. I mean, I didn't walk every square foot of the show, but
right.
I did not notice any Russian, Soviet.
Didn't you get yelled at one point because you were driving it around and some guy, some random commenter's like, "Thanks a lot, Andre. Now the prices for Buhankas is going to go up."
Yeah, like I affected the market.
Yes. So if you bring it to SEMA, you're going to have 2 or 3 comments saying the same thing.
Yeah.
Oh, man.
Anyway, so Toyota was there in a big way.
Yeah.
They showed a special anniversary edition of the Supra. They had a racing version of the GR86. They had another version of the GR86.
These are all production vehicles.
Yeah. These are the ones you could, the racing version is just for racing, right? So, but you could still buy one, and you could actually field it in a racing series. So yeah, I mean, Toyota and Lexus. Lexus was into off-roading. So I did another video from the Lexus booth.
It's like the first LX600 off-roader?
They had a slightly modified LX600. They had a slightly modified, the new GX550, which is actually not quite on sale yet, but it's coming on sale very, very soon.
Right.
And then they had 3 customer builds, actual owners that have their own GXs that build them up a little bit. So they went now all in on camping, overlanding, and off-roading.
Last year they did as well. Last year was when they were doing the what was it, the Trail Doggy Road Hound? What was that called? The Trail?
Overtrail?
Whatever their trail
well,
thing was.
Well, last year it was kind of two-prong approach. Because they had like a high-performance car version, and then they had an SUV. They had a couple of SUVs.
Yeah, but didn't they have like a Sequoia, but a special version of it, or a Tundra, a special version of it?
Yeah, they had a few Sequoia builds and a few Tundra builds. And I think they had an LX600 even last year over there built up. But this year, I didn't see any performance cars in the Lexus booth. It was all about kind of lifting and putting a little bit more off-road worthy tires. And they're also integrating, they have a new system, Associated Accessory Program, they call it, AAP. It's kind of like Mopar, right, where you can actually fold in a few products, even from other companies like Yakima and Prinsu racks and some other items, into, when you're purchasing the vehicle, you can combine it all.
Right, I got you. So it's interesting. I think that Lexus/Toyota has finally gotten the note. They've been playing with him a little bit before where they'd say, yeah, we might think about more off-road worthy versions of Lexus trucks. Now, especially with the introduction of the new GX, it looks like they're pretty damn serious about doing it, which I think is great. There you go. Look at you. Hanging on the side. For those of you who are listening, he's hanging on the side of a GX. That's probably a $100,000 vehicle with all the goodies on it. Look at you mistreated.
Well, I was trying to test the rock slider, right? Because I was looking at it, and you need a really strong rock slider if you're going to hit a rock with it.
Especially if you're going to hit a rock with it, with what you did with your poor Tundra.
Oh my gosh! Yeah,
you got to watch that video, guys.
On TFL Truck.
He turned his step into a rock slider. It was awesome. Twice.
Well, it's not quite a rock slider, but I bent it up so it's now closer to the bed.
I think it's now a rock slider.
Okay.
It's great. But anyway, the point is, bringing your attention to yet another series that we put together for cheap Toyotas.
But you see what I'm saying? Like, they have a Prinsu roof rack already mounted on this new GX.
It's a good-looking roof rack, I dare say.
They have some other items like Pelican boxes. They have a rock slider down below. That's actually a genuine Lexus accessory, so they designed it themselves. They also had something interesting. You can't really see it here, but they had a mirror underneath the GX, and you could see the skid plate that Lexus designed just for under the belly.
So you're telling me that what I'm looking at, is this part plastic, the very front?
The front is plastic, but underneath they actually have a really, really tough skid plate.
That's awesome, and at the same time, I really wish that they would replace the plastic up there and make that all part of the skid plate. I mean, if you're going to fake it, why not just do it, right?
Yeah.
Especially for Lexus.
It actually was stealthy. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And I think Lexus is kind of that little bit stealthy brand where everything is very nice and very kind of really well integrated, but then underneath you have some beef.
I'll give them credit on that. I also like the new. I hope the new grill design goes this direction where it's not as in your face as it used to be, because remember the previous generation GX and LX. How absolutely oversized the spindle grill was. It was just, it was too much.
Yeah, totally.
Way too much.
And also it was hanging down a million miles.
Right. This way, it doesn't look like you have a problem really with your approach angle by comparison.
We still haven't driven the new GX.
No,
or the new Land Cruiser.
That's coming really soon.
Yeah, I hope so.
Yeah, that's coming really soon.
I really hope so. So let's switch gears a little bit. So where should we go? Should we go to Nissan or Ford?
I think we should start with Ford and then move to Nissan. I'll tell you why.
Okay, why?
Because the Ford system. Now, are we doing trucks again, my friend?
No. I don't have a picture of the Mustang. But how about we can transition to Ford and look at the Mustang?
Okay. So we are transitioning to Ford now. Ford had 3 vehicles really on offer. Well, technically more, because they had the Bronco Sport.
Yeah, exactly.
With the build.
Exactly.
But essentially, what they were modeling concepts. But these concepts had a lot of components that you can actually buy and put onto the vehicle to make something very similar to the concept that they have.
Exactly.
So that's the Bronco, that's the Mustang,
Bronco Sport,
and of course the Ranger.
Mm-hmm. And now, because we're not talking about trucks as much, how about we run my little walk around of the new Mustang supercharged car?
All right, let's check it out.
Check this out. We have to talk about this car from 2023 SEMA because it's in Ford's booth and they're calling it the FB800S concept, but it's featuring something that you will be able to buy very, very soon in 2024. We're talking about the latest generation Whipple 3-liter supercharger, so it's pretty massive, and it's sitting on top of a 5-liter Coyote V8. And 800 number, if you can look at this dyno chart, refers over there to the horsepower level that's possible with this engine, if you see the red line. And the blue line is the torque line, and here's how it looks as far as the torque, just over 600 pound-feet of torque at about, 4,500 RPM. So this is a beast. Ford is really, they're doing a lot of different things. So let's walk around this a little bit more. You can see the wheels. So the rest of the car is kind of a concept. The powertrain selection is something that they want to actually sell so you can buy it. We don't have a price yet. Let's come over this way. Let's come over this way. But they're saying 2024 it will be available. They also have something similar happening with the F-150. So let's walk over this way. They have the FP700 package on their F-150, and that starts at just under $13,000. That comes with a lowering kit and wheels and some graphics. So maybe they'll do something similar here, and it's able to be, you actually can get it from the dealership. So the dealership will install it. Well, we can see some of the other engine parts here on this stand. Sorry, that car was being mobbed by people. It's really, a lot of people are taking notice of that. Why? Well, we've seen a supercharged Mustang before, but actually this is something that comes with a warranty. You'll be able to buy it at the dealership, and also they're considering offering it with a manual transmission. The car you see there has a manual transmission or automatic. So we'll have to wait and see. How much will it cost? It could be near $13,000.
So very important. First of all, I like the white wheels.
Yes.
They look cool.
I'm not a fan of black wheels.
I'm not either.
Because it's kind of hiding the wheel.
Yeah.
It's hiding it.
If you have a cool design, you want it to be seen, right?
Yes.
And also chroming them nowadays, I think that's kind of passe.
No.
But making them like a certain color that complements the body, I love doing that when it's done right. And it was done right. I think this is I like this Mustang better than that nightmarish monster thing that they recently built for Mustang.
Oh, the GTD?
Yeah.
This like $300,000 a bunkers car.
Right. That goes beyond, I'm sure it's amazing, but this Mustang looks more obtainable.
Yes.
Even though it's still going to be stupidly expensive. And here's one of the reasons why. They have a supercharger kit in there. Now, it's a 3-liter supercharger.
Whipple.
It is a Whipple, and it means that you're putting out over 800 horsepower when it's properly connected.
And you know what? They had a manual transmission in this concept.
Can
you imagine this?
So you can either get the 6-speed manual or you can get a 10-speed automatic transmission. I love that.
Can you imagine
huge.
shifting that thing?
Yes. I want.
But you need to go to the gym and like exercise your legs.
Nah, I'm sure it'll be fine. The clutch is probably really light, like a regular Mustang, which is a relatively light. You know, I'm sure it's a performance clutch, but still, come on. Okay. Look, I did it in a Hellcat. I can do it in this.
So the only thing that upset me about this Mustang news piece is that they don't have the exact price for the supercharger. But they've done this with the F-150 just recently.
And I think it was the same supercharger, am I correct?
But yes, except different power levels.
Right, of course.
Truck versus car, right?
Right.
So the truck had a little bit less horsepower, well, 700 approximately, which is still insane. But that package was like $12,500 to start for the F-150. So if they keep this Mustang package in the same neighborhood, you might be looking at $13,000 or more dollars with some options, right? Plus, you know, the dealer might be sneaking in some fees on top of that somehow.
Well, for one thing, there's a couple things. One, it has to be a Mustang GT, cannot be any other Mustang. That's the first thing.
Yeah, it's a 5-liter V8.
It's got to be for the 5-liter V8. It has to be installed by either an AIC certified tech or Ford tech. Can't be any
dealership.
Yeah, you can't just go and bring it home and wrench on it yourself unless you're actually, certified.
And it's warranted because of that.
That's right. So it's warranted. That's the good news.
Yeah.
And it's more than just putting on a supercharger. So there's a lot of other additional components that go into it. That's dealing with everything from the ECU to the to cooling. So all of that goes in there. Now that is just the supercharger. So you're suddenly nuking the vehicle. And once you're adding all that extra power, then you have to find ways.
With that.
Yeah, good luck with that. Putting that power to the ground and also making it actually handle if that's what you want. That was the reason why this kit and actually a concept was produced for the auto show, what you just saw, because they want to harness all that power in the most reasonable way and also make it look cool because the front end and the rear end, all that aero is done for that concept. I'm willing to bet that a majority of those components are or will be available for Ford.
Yes, I would say so. And actually, Ford is pretty good about this. They have a pretty good website for performance where you can kind of select and pick different components.
Right.
Sometimes cosmetic, sometimes real performance parts, even for trucks and cars. So that's pretty nice.
That is pretty nice. Now, there was also a Bronco there and a Ranger, and they're very similar in terms of the components that they received as well, because once again, we were talking about the difference between what AEV does for General Motors and what ARB is doing with Ford. And it's a very similar thing in terms of augmented suspension, tires, wheels, all that stuff has been beefed up with a lot of the components coming in from, of course, ARB and making these super off-road capable vehicles. Once again, components that I'm pretty sure you will be able to get from Ford in the very near future because it looks like a partnership that's going to happen. Yeah.
And then of course at SEMA there are things that you could not get from in the near future unless you build it yourself. And I'm looking at the VW Bug with, I think these are 54s.
Well, they're nearly as wow.
So I'm 6'3".
Yeah.
And I am the tires are almost above my chest at this point.
Those are massive. So this is a rock buggy for those of you who are listening to this broadcast. Rock buggy that has a Volkswagen Beetle shell. I'm pretty sure there's not a 14 or 1600 cc air-cooled engine trying to push that. Am I correct?
There's probably something beefier.
I would imagine a V8 of some sort or something like that.
And so yeah, there are crazy stuff like this, and this is why SEMA is also pretty fun.
Yeah,
right? Just walking
these
around.
crazy builds. But it's entirely possible that when this build came along, it could have been the wheel manufacturer or the tire manufacturer that was part of this, which is why the build was established. It could be any number of things. Honestly, I can't tell from this distance what, but this actually looks like it's a competitive rock buggy to me.
Yeah, it could be. I didn't talk to the builder. I couldn't get a little bit of time. But this also is a collaboration of many sponsors usually, right?
Yep.
That's what usually happens. For example, like Yukon gears and axles. You need some big axles to support these tires, right?
They're
so
huge.
so there's stuff like that. There was another bug I saw that was a dually.
That's barely a bug, my friend.
Yeah, it's a stretched chassis with a big V8. And it's got big wheels and tires, and it's got dual tires in the back.
Well, that attracted you because you thought, truck!
Yeah.
And you went running over there and you realized it was a car and you were bummed.
Yeah. But then, so let's ground ourselves a little bit and let's come back to Nissan. How about that?
Yes. Now, Nissan's very cool with SEMA so far because they're bringing in, their booth is nowhere near as big as Toyota's. Big surprise to that,
but bigger than before.
Right, that's what I heard.
Yeah.
Last year's was pretty good size, and they had some interesting variety there as well. Like, for instance, they had a Nissan, what was it, the Aria, but they had like a woody version of it with like smoothies and, you know, fake wood paneling on it, and it looked kind of cool. But this year, there's a lot more race involved, including an off-road Z.
Yeah, so this is a Safari Z project concept that they brought. And I already have a video kind of dedicated to this. I spoke with Carl Phillips from Nissan. He's really a fun guy to talk to. He's very knowledgeable. And this is an homage to a 1971 Z car that actually won an East Safari
Rally.
In Africa.
Yes, and I actually had a model of that car.
Really?
At home, yep. I think it was Testers or one of those. And at the time, this is back like in probably the early 80s, I couldn't figure out why there was this off-road looking, you know, thing. It was just a, you know, plastic model.
Yeah.
And I remember building it, and I had no idea what the whole Safari thing was. I was just learning about what the Paris-Dakar Rally was all about. At the time, it was actually going, you know, into the desert and going through Africa. So seeing this was like, oh my God, this brings back my childhood. So it's very, very cool that Nissan did that. And I think they're beginning to see the light when they go back to their past with some of their retro stuff. For instance, what they did with their pickup truck, right? Yeah.
For example, hard body
That's
package,
exactly
right?
what I'm talking about.
Exactly. So this is quite interesting. Even though you probably may not be able to buy a lift kit for a Z car anytime soon from Nissan.
Right.
But, for example, the wheels were designed in a way that can be productionalized. So if you like the wheel design on the Safari concept, you can grab that. The skid plate may not come, but it just shows what's possible, right?
Sure.
And then there's another vehicle that they had that I did a whole other interview about. This was the Sentra, okay?
Right, but this is a special Sentra.
Yes, not any Sentra. They called it the DET concept. What does that stand for?
No idea.
Dual overhead cam, electronic fuel injection, that's the E, and the T, turbocharging. Yes.
Okay, but this is not an SER. This is not something that's production. This is a special concept.
Yes.
Right.
So
there's one more thing before we go to this clip.
Yeah, what's up?
It's also a manual transmission.
Yes. And I had no idea. I didn't look into this before the show. Our friends north of us in Canada get manual transmissions? What?
I know. You Canadians and all your
Steven.
good luck.
I'm talking to Steven Elmer right now.
I'm sure
what are
he's
you
watching.
doing? Okay.
So let's check out this clip.
Carl, I know Nathan and Roman would really appreciate seeing this.
Yeah, I'm sure.
I'm with Carl from Nissan.
Hi.
And what we're standing next to is your Sentra DET concept here at SEMA.
Yeah.
So what is this all about?
So inspiration for this car was really the Sentra Cup series that Nissan Canada has, their race series, which we thought was just really cool, bring some excitement to the Sentra. And we thought, well, what if we kind of took that idea and went to the next level, right, for the SEMA show? So we built the DET concept. DET, a bit of a throwback, right, to, you know, dual overhead cam, electronic fuel injection, turbocharging.
And turbocharging.
Yeah, a bit of a throwback for guys who are into Sentra, you know.
So, a quick story. I was at the hotel today, and I saw in black, and it looked pristine, a Sentra SER Spec V just rolled by me.
Wow, nice.
Were you driving that?
No, I wish I was, because there are not many of those left in good condition these days, right?
So this is kind of harkening back to that,
yeah, absolutely, right? Trying to bring a little bit of excitement back to the Sentra.
Okay, well, let's pop the hood, because this is a concept part of this, right?
Absolutely. So you can see we've got some louvers we put in the hood to take some of the heat out, because inside we have
a turbo.
A turbocharged, fully built MR20 engine. So, we took the stock motor out and went through it, and we worked with the guys from Moto IQ who did the engine build for us. And so pretty much from the bottom up. I mean, the crank is still the stock crank, but it's got custom rods and pistons and an adapter plate to run additional secondary fuel injection or injectors, right, to keep up with the turbo. We got a turbo kit, intercooler. It's running Motec ECU to make all of this work together, because obviously this is a one-off concept vehicle, not a production.
So the Cup Series cars in Canada, what's powering those cars?
So they use the MR20 with some Motec tuning, but they are not turbocharged.
Okay. And those cars are also available, or in Canada market, you can get a manual transmission as well.
Correct. And so we don't have a manual available in the US, so we did a manual swap using the parts from the Canadian car.
Okay, that's very cool. And also, tell me a little bit about like the tire and suspension.
Yeah, sure.
Those elements.
So it's sitting on our custom set of Nismo coilovers, as well as a set of prototype Nismo sway bars. So, those are parts we are studying for production, right? They're fully production intent. Okay. We haven't launched them yet. And then the wheels you're seeing, we've got black on this side, bronze on the other. These are our new Nismo LMRS 6 wheels in an 18-inch fitment, and these are going into production. So obviously,
both colors.
Both colors.
Okay.
Obviously here for front-wheel drive application, but we are also doing this wheel for rear-wheel drive applications like 370s, 350s, the old R32s, and such.
Well, it's very cool. I mean, like I said, so we're doing Best of Vegas show here for our car podcast, and I'm sure Roman, Nathan, and myself included, we appreciate those little turbocharged or high-performance sedans.
A turbocharged tidbit, right?
Yeah.
In the midst of all of this.
Yes. So I really appreciate your
Excellent.
time.
Andre, great talking to you again. Thanks for coming by.
Thanks a lot.
All right. Well, first of all, we did have a Nissan Sentra SER that had a manual transmission.
Dude, I was trying to think back. I'm talking about like 2000.
Oh, that's way
like
back.
20 years ago.
Oh, yeah.
Like, can we go there?
Sure.
I mean, I was just a young lad.
Okay.
I was graduating college, and I loved those things. One of the original SER Spec Vs.
Yes.
And I don't know if Nissan planted this or something else happened. I was walking out of my hotel Tuesday morning to go to SEMA, and an immaculate, like 2000 SER in black with silver wheels just rolled by the hotel. I was like, what is that? and then I saw the show, and I asked Carl if he planted that, and he said no, he did not plant that.
And he was giving, did you wink?
No.
Okay.
So, pretty cool. Once again, like the wheels could be productionalized.
Mm-hmm.
The turbocharging, the beauty about the Sentra is that it's affordable.
Yes.
Right? It's under $22,000 to start. I was just looking at
which
the
is
spec
one
sheet.
of the least expensive vehicles in its class.
Yes. So if you imagine, that's a big value proposition. So if you need a new car, you can go there and purchase a Sentra. Mm-hmm. But if you turbocharge it, all of a sudden you're moving that price way up.
Sure.
So you may not find as many customers. But I wish they would consider that still.
Well, this is what happened last time. Remember, they had a Nissan Sentra Nismo, and it had like a manual transmission, and it had beefed up suspension, nice wheels and tires, and blah, 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 and nobody bought it. I mean, I know you guys are out there, you three owners are like, oh, I did.
Yeah.
Not enough did to substantiate a vehicle like this in our fleet. Frankly speaking, Americans don't like to buy manual transmission vehicles to begin with. In addition, sedans, not that popular right now. So it's a real shame. I hate that because I used to love those vehicles. I loved in the 80s when Nissan, just in the late 80s, started adding a little bit of extra pep to the Sentra and doing something with it. By the way, here's a funny thing. I believe it's going to be either on Classics now or Car, but you'll definitely find it on alltfl.com. Brendan and I saw a second generation Nissan Sentra over at the auction, and we drove it around and did a little review on it.
Is it Was it a standard one
Yeah,
or a
yeah.
souped up one?
No, it was very standard.
Okay.
It was very old and tattered, but very cool. And you know that it was 87, and those were the years when I was in high school. So for me, it was just like, oh my God, I'm looking at my past, which is really cool. Anyway, going back to the Sentra, it would be awesome if Nissan were to do something with that performance-wise. But let's face it, even with the downturn right now in the public opinion of electrification, they're still moving towards electrification. So I don't think they're going to do anything special.
They're still working on those things, of course. They had the Nissan Frontier in their booth as well, which was a kind of a off-road race prep.
Is that the one with the V8?
No, it actually had it was actually a competing truck with stock power.
Oh wait, was that the one that
it was the Nora?
Yeah, it did.
Rally.
It won. It won its class.
Yeah, it did.
Yeah.
So they had that. So of course they're looking at many different avenues, right? So they're looking at pickup trucks, even though the Titan is going away. They're still thinking about like what could replace it in the future, right? So Safari Z, amazing. Sentra. Well, a lot of people who buy Sentras may want to spice them up later, right? So maybe put some wheels and tires on it, some suspension components.
I've seen that quite a bit, especially if you go towards, and nothing wrong with this, but like in Tennessee, Mississippi, those areas where the plants are and where a lot of employees get discounts on those Nissan products, I tend to find a lot of Sentras and Altimas in those areas, and then a lot of people tend to make them look nicer, beef them up a little bit, or even make them a little bit more race-worthy. So that's kind of cool. Of course, they don't make them look like this 911 that Andre just brought up on the page, a GT3 RS, pardon me. That's a little much.
Yeah, so then there were a few stock vehicles too.
Yeah.
Like this GT3 RS. But what catches my eye, and there was like a Carrera GT in certain booths. There were some,
But
high-end
Porsche wasn't
exotic.
there in themselves.
No, not Porsche themselves.
Right.
This is just cars that usually, what they usually show off is like protective film or ceramic coatings or like window film, like window tinting.
Maybe wheels or something like
wheels
that.
and tires.
Yeah.
So these are very high-end cars that, just that little extra, protect your paint or, just make it a little bit nicer.
Right.
So I just took a picture because it just kind of really smacked me in the face with its red wheels. And
it's a beautiful car.
Yeah.
I can imagine the owner of that pulling up and telling his employees, "Yeah, you like this car? Well, if you guys work twice as hard, I can buy another one next year."
That's funny.
Yeah.
But look, this 911 GT3 RS could probably drive underneath the truck that's right next to it.
Yeah, it's interesting that they pair them up like that. But this is the outside section.
Yeah,
so
this is just kind of a collection of different vehicles. So.
Now, the other thing that happens at SEMA is there's actually live driving. So they have a whole bunch of drifting, massive demos with that, and some power
very
stuff.
Smoky, very loud.
Right, and they also have a long cruise as well, I believe. I don't remember if that's happening on Fridays.
Usually it's a parade, like the exit parade.
That's the cruise,
they call it.
yeah.
But now it's integrated into the SEMA Fest, which is also a concert, right?
Right.
So, and that's amazing. So if you're in Vegas on Friday, well, I guess we're publishing it just after this happened. So if you enjoyed it, please let us know.
Let us know if you enjoyed it. So sorry that we're a little off with our timing. But there's some good news here. First of all, the attendance seems to have matched or possibly better than last year's, regardless of the fact that huge news, Stellantis wasn't there.
And yeah, and there were no new vehicle intros. And by that, I mean like manufacture new vehicles.
Usually, at least over the past, I'd say 5 or 6 years, a lot of automakers like to at least show off one car, like, here's our SEMA debut, because they're trying to feed into that particular segment, that public, And in this case, not really. They showed some rare vehicles. They showed some special ones, but nothing in terms of a brand new vehicle.
Well, for example, the Tacoma X Runner, which is a truck topic, is a lowered street worthy concept truck.
Sure.
But the word is concept, right?
It's not a production vehicle.
Even though they could listen to you guys if you said, build the X Runner now. If you wanted that, Toyota might listen to that.
Well, and that's the point of doing these concepts, right? So let's quickly talk about Stellantis not being there, because this is huge news. The past several years that we've been there, Jeep, Ram, and Dodge have had a massive presence at SEMA. Last year, Dodge had this one of the largest booths there where they had a whole bunch of their Chargers and Challengers scattered all over the floor. They had this huge screen up with Vin Diesel talking about family heritage and blah, 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 blah.
And they had their big Hemis.
Yes.
And also an electric Dodge concept.
That's right. They had their electric Dodge concept out there too. And loud music, we couldn't even get a minute to film without the loud music. It's really hard to film when you have loud music, not just because it gets in the way, but also because there's copyright issues. And so we can't film with that. That's a whole different story. But that was just one booth. Then Jeep was everywhere. All the Mopar stuff, by the way, I forgot to mention Mopar is usually all over the place. None of that was there this year. I mean, there were individuals who brought in their own vehicles, their own builds that were built by Stellantis, but Stellantis themselves, they were a no-show. Why was that?
It's because of the strike that was recently basically resolved, but they still need to vote and do a bunch of things.
It's almost resolved, I would say. Yeah.
And actually, the big three, so all Ford, Stellantis, and General Motors, they're all reached tentative agreements with the UAW union on resolving the strike and actually restarting the factories that were closed and all the suppliers that were affected by this too.
It's right. It's not just the customers who are affected by this, and it's not just the pocketbook of the automakers. There are hundreds, if not thousands, of suppliers for each automaker that aren't able to send their goods. Now, there is one positive here. A lot of suppliers were having a really difficult time with their own supply because of all the shortages that really manifested throughout the pandemic. Now, some of them have a little bit of a backlog, so they're able to, uncork these, issues and let them flow back to the automaker. I'm not saying that's going to help production because right now, for those of you who are waiting for a vehicle on a production line, guess what? You're going to have to wait even longer in most cases.
Yeah, and so Stellantis, obviously made a decision. They also pulled out of Los Angeles Auto Show at the same announcement that they made. And then, so hopefully next year they will return and also bring some new products like the updated Ram 1500 that's coming soon.
Yeah, I'm guessing that we may see that perhaps as early as the Chicago show at this point, if they stay with that.
Which is February at this point.
Right.
Yeah.
So maybe that'll happen. But by Stellantis not being there, and we're not even talking about LA. LA is still a month off. Well, actually less than that now. It's
like
3 weeks off now. Wow. But the deal is that by pulling out and removing their product from there, it gave a huge boost to Toyota, who I think next in line had the largest, Toyota and Lexus combined. Yeah, and that was huge. And another bit of news that's really important for some of you fans out there, Honda made a return to SEMA. They've been gone for years, so they officially returned as well. So it's an interesting mixed bag. And yeah, there was bad news. I really think it was sad that Stellantis had to pull out. I think there were money issues tied into the strike, and they're simply like, we're not going to pound our chest while we're in the middle of this thing. Now that hopefully it's been resolved, perhaps that they'll reconsider Los Angeles, although I doubt it. But I think it's possible that we may see them at either Detroit or Chicago.
Exactly. So overall, great news. If you want to see some more details from SEMA, please check out alltfl.com.
We have several videos.
We have several videos based on trucks, and I have a truck podcast focused on this. Also, I saw the most luxurious and the most expensive and the most, I think, detailed Mercedes Sprinter Overland van that I've ever seen in my life, and I've seen lots of them.
Yeah, there are a lot out there.
It smacked me in the face.
Really?
So check out alltfl.com, please. And also, there's a supersized Jeep truck that you must see.
Okay.
Yeah, but once again, check out alltfl.com.
That's right, guys. If you manage to get to SEMA, regardless of whether or not you went to the public event or you were able to get there under other you had a cousin who owned a gas station. We've heard some interesting ways of getting into that. Anyway, let us know below in the comments what you thought of this year's show and what you'd like to see at next year's show. We definitely want to see some changes ourselves. So we're curious about your perspective as well.
And also get involved, right? SEMA will have and currently has actually public, just private membership. And why would you join SEMA membership? Well, it's because it's important. All the regulations that the government imposes on manufacturers.
Right.
SEMA tries to reconcile all those things. Bigger tires, We don't want people to outlaw bigger tires.
Yep.
Heavier bumpers. We don't want those to get outlawed either.
SEMA represents people who will go and fight legally to make sure that these components can stay on your vehicle or be built for your vehicle. And they've already done quite a bit. There's a lot going on behind the scenes with SEMA and other organizations like SEMA, allowing you guys to actually work on your car by yourself without having to go to the automaker or, face possible legal repercussions. These are all things that they're working on. So it is important to support an organization like SEMA and other organizations like them.
Yes. Well, thanks for joining us. We'll see you next time. And hopefully, I think Roman will be here next week.
Yes, he will be back. And he'll be fresh back from Japan. Hopefully, he brought us a lot of sushi.